I don't know if this mic is working. I really hope it is, because I feel like it would make the audio better. I was going to say that I'm going to sit in this dark little corner and make this video, but then I decided to turn my lamp on and now it's really shining in my face, so don't worry about it. But recently I've been kind of in the YouTube rabbit hole of watching people talk about books, basically. And there's this one channel, can't remember the guy's surname, but his name is Fred, and he's like Fred Etymology or something like that, I think his channel name is, and I'm honestly hooked. I think he has like only like 2 or 3 videos. Anyway, yeah, sorry, I'm just gonna put my phone on silent. And I'm just locked in, and again, he only has a few videos, so I haven't really noticed or been able to watch so many. But then I got introduced to like Frankie's Shelf, and I've watched a couple of his videos about like really books about obsessive main characters, and I was like, the amount of like deep diving that you guys could do into some of these books is incredible. And then it got me thinking, I was like, I'm a bit strange in the sense that I feel like I have the toxic trait where I think that I can like teach myself anything. Girl, calm down. Also, secondly, I'm always like kind of in this like nerdy zone of like wanting to, why do I keep saying like, okay, I'll try and stop. This like nerdy zone of, you know, like wanting to like be curious about stuff and like learn about stuff, whatever. So I was like, okay, what am I interested in? And then I was like, exactly what I'm watching. And so I kind of started thinking about like, how has like social media impacted the prevalence of reading, because I've noticed, as many of you will have, via booktube, booktok, bookstagram, book whatever else you want to say, but it's almost become kind of like cool to read, whereas before it was very much like you read. I mean, some people still do that, but it's become a little bit more like it's cool to read. So I wanted to know that, and I was like, also like, how has the rhetoric around reading changed in terms of like the types of books that are being released and genres, quantity of those books that are being published per year, like has it gone up, how the reading scenes evolved, and if that's actually had any type of impact on society. I'm going to, well, you're going to hear what I think in a minute. Anyway, this is essentially a verbal think piece. Is that what that's called? Anyway, about how it's impacted society, entertainment, culture, because inevitably it will have. It's like TV shows like Gossip Girl, Imprint, you know, Society, Pretty Little Liars. I know these are really niche, like Friends. Okay, let me talk about more The Office, like those kind of things. And I think I'll be referencing a few examples of where this may have happened, and also a little bit of the dark side. So essentially this is like about the like Dewey Decimal to dopamine, and like the renaissance of social media, or the social media renaissance of reading, essentially. So I guess without sorry, I feel like my voice is quite jarring, so many people won't want to listen to this, but I promise you I have a reasonably good thing to say, I think. Please don't pay attention to the books that are visible. It's just a stack, okay? Pay more attention to the fact that I built this Lego orchid. Okay, let's talk about that instead. Ow, my shoulder just clicked. Anyway, so hold on, let me take a sip of water. Where are we going with this? So for a really long time there's been stereotypes about the avid reader, and it was definitely more fixated on the fact that it's like the person was a solitary introvert, maybe they're wearing glasses. They're kind of like hidden behind a wall of text, and I think reading was viewed as quite a private intellectual pursuit, very distinct from the like popular culture that we live in now. But I think over the past few years, but maybe like 5 years, probably around the pandemic times, maybe we've seen a shift, and a lot of that shift has been driven by visual engines, which is quite surprising considering books are essentially, you would leave things to your imagination, you read the text, you create your own images, but now we've moved to a more visual dynamic, so TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, all the Instagram, all the book stuff, whatever that I mentioned earlier. And essentially reading has had a giant rebrand. Whoever's on the PR team for reading is probably having a field day back there. But it's definitely migrated from like quiet corners and like libraries and to being very much centre stage on the internet, and there's big communities who are part of it. But this resurgence has done a lot more than just selling books, but it's also like fundamentally altered reading in general. A lot of people have been able to transform it into like an aesthetic lifestyle or a form of social currency. The amount of people I hear like, I've read like 200 books this year. There's only 365 days in the year. You're telling me like roughly on average you're reading almost like 1.5 books a day, and like some books are thick as well now. So you know, the Goodreads reading list is popping off, okay? And not just Goodreads, like all the others. Like I know people use Fable, some people use Storygraph. A lot of new things have been developed because of this. But when did this aesthetic shift happen from like nerdy to cool? I think that is one of the most distinct changes that social media has had on reading, is, like I said, the visualization of the literary experience. So on like Instagram and TikTok, it's not just a vessel for text, but it's almost like a prop, and you'll see a lot of aesthetics like the rise of dark academia or cozy reading, and it's almost reading has turned into a performance rather than just like reading. And so we've replaced the like emotional side, not entirely, of reading, but it's been replaced, and now it's been replaced with almost an aesthetic intellectual vibe. And I guess some types of reading were gatekept prior to this, or like, I don't want to say it was gatekept, but there's some literary circles and people be infiltrating them, and I kind of love that. But also now the value of a book, and you know how they say don't judge a book by its cover. I fear sometimes, especially like in more recent times, some of the value of a book is weighted on like how beautiful the cover will look like next to your coffee, or like how effectively you can portray a summary of in a 60-second video, or the emotional devastation that the book causes, or if there's like a really key talking point, which I think is one of the reasons why like Colleen Hoover books took over, is because they got people talking. So I guess the key takeaway is that reading is no longer just about like consumption of a story, but it's about a signal that it generates in and of itself, of like reading makes you cool. But then because of this reading makes you cool or whatever, we've had a shift in like tropes, genres and quantity, because social media has changed how we talk about books. I think a lot of, like I said before, there was like a literary group and literary critique, or where people might have read a review in like the New York Times or whatever, or like, you know, those little bylines in books, it was by other authors who have read the arc. It's been replaced with like trope marketing. So in the past, a book might have been marketed, like I said, based on its plot or maybe the author's reputation, but today books are being sold via hashtags or describing a specific like niche or trope. So for example, enemies to lovers, found family, morally great character, that kind of thing. And so it allows the reader to know like what type of flavour of dopamine they want, and critics can argue that it risks reducing literature to a checklist rather than a cohesive art form that is a combination of ingredients. But there's been a rise in a lot of specific genres, so I didn't even know this existed before, but the genre of romantasy, which is romance and fantasy together. I think probably the biggest winner of this social media age is probably books like Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J Maas, which combines the two and makes it more accessible, and it caters specifically, I want to say, to like the demographic that grew up on Twilight and Harry Potter. They can like transition into this kind of book. Another option is contemporary romance. I used to never read these, but there's massive sections if you go to bookstores now, and it's essentially lost or shed its guilty pleasure label, and it's now been making its way into the mainstream of literary canon. And I think it's largely due to the intense like emotional engagement that some of these books can generate, particularly on video. And then you also get books that are like the sad lit books, which is books that make you cry. I've never really cried at a book, but I know a lot of people have, and it's a great way, I guess, of like locking people in. A video user could be like crying over a book, and then that will go viral, and it's like a challenge to others, and it'll be like, are you gonna cry too? I'm probably not gonna cry, but somebody may. I think the resurgence has also allowed some books to like break the traditional mold of how a book should be. So some books have like made a comeback. Like those books that came out ages ago, I'll give examples like Holly and Hoover. It ends with us. It wasn't a new book, it just managed to, I mean, it wasn't not successful, her books were moderately successful, but TikTok really catapulted her book into the New York Times bestseller list, and it sometimes holds multiple spots. I think that people think her writing, especially if you've not been exposed to reading too much, it's like raw, emotional, fast-paced. It's quite an easy read in certain sense, and you get a real big emotional reaction, particularly on social media. But enough about Colleen Hoover. But there's also books like Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller. I think it was originally published in like the early 2010s, so like 2011 or something, and then it had an explosion in sales nearly a decade later, like after 2020. Why is that? It's because it's a tragedy, and it's a lot of users were filming themselves like weeping at this book, and it is a lot of people's 5-star reads. But I think that is because of like people may have never even known about it if they hadn't heard about it on social. I probably wouldn't have. I'm not a big Greek mythological retelling reader, and so I probably wouldn't have. And then I actually have this book here, books like 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. Again, it has thrived on the aesthetic side of booktok, because it's about glamour, old Hollywood, complex female characters, but it became a fashion statement, not just a literary one. But there is a dark side to all of this, because some people could argue that it's very the reading is essentially becoming like falling into consumerism and performity. I don't know. So although I might say that the resurgence is positive, a lot more people are reading, the algorithm has introduced this like dark side as well. So we have the commodification of hauls. So there's a growing emphasis on buying books rather than just reading. Listen, I'm a culprit. I'll be like, I'll buy this book. And then add it to my TBR. The TBR grows faster than it decreases. Like the amount of time, it's so easy to buy a book. It's very simple. It doesn't take a lot, does it? But to read the book, you need time. and it needs to lock you in, it needs to hook you in, la la. So like I said, big emphasis on reading, or on buying rather than reading. I love a book haul video. I am easily influenced. So when a creator shows off their stack of like unread purchases or whatever, it encourages hyper consumerism, and this can almost like fetishize the ownership of books and the act, rather than the act of actually reading. And I guess that can contribute to waste, financial pressure, because if it adds other people want to buy the book even if they don't have time to read it, just to keep up with the trends. But also it can also add a level of like a physical, emotional or a mental pressure, because some people will be like, well, so and so is reading like 15 books a month, I can't even get through one a month. Like, I'm quite a fast reader, so I know just even in real life people are like, oh my god, you've already, like, you started the book on Friday and you've already, like, it's Saturday night and you finished it. I'm like, yeah, I just like read fast. I promise I'm not a skimmer. Not. I could make a whole video on skim reading. Don't do that. But yeah, like, I probably, and I know that I've, just by doing that, not on purpose, I've accidentally, unknowingly put pressure on other people who are like, okay, I need to finish this book by Monday because you've already read it. Like, no, you don't need to finish it by that time. Sorry, is this annoying? Anyway, I think another bad side is you can almost get a homogenization of taste, because a lot of what the algorithm is promoting is like what's considered popular, and so often you'll see the same like 20 books that are on rotation at the same time. Everyone's talking about the same books. Occasionally you'll go and read the book and you'll be like, why is everyone talking about this? Generally people are just talking about it because other people are talking about it. That's crazy. And so you get this like feedback loop of like the viral criteria, catchy tropes, pretty covers, drama, la la la, and then that, when that succeeds, it drowns and quietens the more expensive, experimental or diverse sounds that don't really clip so well in like a 30-second video. But like I said, going back to like the whole buying and like reading thing, is that sometimes reading has like come across almost like fast fashion, but like literature. So now publishers are also rushing to sign authors whose books fit these social media trends and fast fashion. I mean, I know there was this like big like viral or like online controversy of, I don't really know who he is, but I think he might have been on The Bachelor. I'm not sure. I don't really watch US reality shows, so I don't really know, but he got offered like a book deal for not just like one book but like multiple books, and then everyone was like, there's people who are like struggling for so long, but because this guy is like viral on TikTok or whatever. I mean, to be fair, I had seen some of his videos. He was like reading A Court of Thorns and Roses in his tractor, and he got given a book deal. I mean, I'm sure he tried, like, he writes, I don't know anything about the guy, but people were saying that people are writing for so long and not getting picked up, and this guy's been given like a 3-book deal or like whatever. Fast fashion. Okay, fast fashion. But so publishers will like often sign people quickly, or like more people. Maybe it's becoming quantity over quality, I don't know. I'm sure some of these people are producing some quality content, but then the books are getting released quickly to capitalize on a specific trope, and sometimes that can be at the expense of editing or quality or depth. I mean, I also do think that some books are getting a lot, like, there's some books that you would never have heard of, but because of booktok and la la la, they're getting exposure. Like, I'll give you an example. Heated Rivalry, apparently it's published by an indie Canadian author or publisher. It got picked up as a like TV show. They've made the TV show, but in Canada. But because of the discourse around it and how popular it's becoming, HBO snapped it up as well now, so they can distribute it more widely. And I think that just like shows how some media is, like, this is a traditional form of media, but is pushing into other types of media, both traditional and non-traditional. But what's the silver lining of all of this is that I think this is really going to help, like, despite all the critique and all of that, there has been a revolutionizing or revitalizing impact on society. One is probably literary rates. I am working in a specific area where we have to create like patient information sheets for informing patients and their families about what's going on, but we're told during our trainings that the literary, like the reading rate, the average reading rate in the UK is like that of the 9-year-old, even for adults. And so I think this may help. I mean, we won't notice now, but we'll notice in 10 to 15 years perhaps, the literary rates, and how that by making reading cool for like Gen Z, not millennials, maybe millennials, I don't know, Gen Z, Gen Alpha, Gen Beta, question mark, I don't know, you might actually, even though it is a screen and they're probably only reading it because they saw it on TikTok, it might increase the reading rate. Some books are not going to be increasing anybody's vocabulary, let me tell you that. But also the survival of like physical retail. I used to see nobody going in towards Waterstones. Now people be going in towards Waterstones, and I love it. And I love watching like a Barnes and Noble haul, or like people like running around Barnes and Noble on like TikTok when their like significant other will be like, okay, you have 2 minutes to look around, and then I'm going to give you 1 minute to pick up as many books as you want, and I'll buy them for your birthday. I also love the community aspect. So like a lot of niche readers are finding other people who like the same thing as them, but even non-niche like communities, you're making a robust community. You can make friends with people who have similar tastes to you, who can then recommend other things to you, because I always find that the best recommendations you can get is from somebody whose like top 3 books are similar to yours, that kind of thing. So yeah, so in conclusion, social media has undeniably, like, I'm sorry, you are lying if you don't think this is true, don't think this is true, has revolutionized the reading landscape. It's like stripped away this like whole like literary like cliche and replaced it with something that's a bit new, maybe a little bit superficial, but almost like a digital book club. The amount of book clubs, I'm part of like 6 book clubs on Fable, okay, but then like I'm part of one in real life, and it's great. So it's replaced this like, it's replaced that era basically, but there are some concerns around like consumerism and like simplification of critique, and you know, people critiquing things that aren't necessarily like jumping onto the bandwagon, like following the sheep kind of vibe. But at the core, I don't think we can refute the fact that like people are reading, and I love that. And in an era of shrinking attention spans, and the fact that like millions of like young people are like debating the merits of like a 500-page fantasy novel, I think that is a cultural triumph. Listen, there's worse things that's happened. There's definitely worse things that have happened out there. Like there are wars going on. So if some people are going to read a book, I'm not going to complain. And I think it definitely, like, I was always a reader, like I said, but it definitely got me a little bit more into reading, because I was like, oh, like people are talking about reading, like they would talk about Squid Games on like a Netflix show, you know. So I love it, and I really hope that this mic worked. And I don't know if I'm going to make another video like this, but if my toxic trait carries on and I think that I can write these like or I can make these like verbal think pieces, that feels great. Anyway, let me know your comments if you have any. Do you think that social media and reading, like linking up the way it is a good thing, or do you think it's actually a bad thing? I don't know, I told you my opinion. And also let me know if you have any other topics you think I should cover, because listen, I got loads in here, but I want to give the people what the people want. Okay, I'm now gonna, the reality, put all this back, because this pile is, oh, please don't fall, this took me an hour to make. It's balancing precariously on some books, so I should probably put it back. Anyway, lovely to see you all, and maybe I'll see you again. Maybe I won't, but if I don't, that's okay. Merry Christmas, because it's near Christmas. It's the 18th, so it's a week. Yeah, a week away from Christmas. Anyway, I think that's enough yapping from